You would never imagine just how astonishing the ending of this story is. Thus, he made up his mind to stay in Fidelity, a place with boundless potential, but his father strongly discouraged him, telling him not to make any foolish decisions. And when his wife, who was completely in the dark about all this, found out about Richard's childhood experiences, she immediately got into a heated argument with her father. So he fully supports Richard in chasing his dreams, spending all his savings on Pepper's best investment ever. Meanwhile, he showed his cooking skills by grinding hot sauce, as seen in the video. The new product succeeded with family teamwork, but surprisingly, the factory laid off more staff. He realized saving the factory meant hustling his ideas into action. He hoped the supervisor would pitch his bold flavor change idea to the president, but the supervisor waved him off, saying, "Dream on." Because new product development takes years and costs millions, who believe a janitor could do it? Obviously, Richard doesn't back down easily. If the supervisor won't relay it, he'll go to the CEO himself. Late that night, he stealthily found the number for the big shots in the company, and the next day, while the supervisor was busy, he made that call. When the secretary answered and asked his identity, Richard carefully said he was the chief technician of the cleaning department. The secretary paused for a second and then thought, "Wait a minute, isn't that just a fancy way of saying janitor?" Not fooling the secretary, Richard quickly clarified his purpose, claiming a super idea to save the factory. "If the boss cares about his employees, he should hear this idea," Richard said. The secretary hesitated but eventually transferred the call. The president, upon hearing this, was totally shocked. Who knew a janitor was actually paying attention to his video? Richard suggested the president try a new product. The secretary was curious and asked for details. The president's doubtful tone made Richard a bit anxious. But he said, "I really do have an awesome idea, you just have to trust me." Richard insisted it was an idea that could save the factory, even though self-doubt was ringing in his ears. But he mustered the courage and whipped up a fiery red product anyway. At this point, Richard was ready to send the sample to the president, knowing this could represent hope for the future. The next day, he hurriedly sent out the sample. The president, seeing the fiery Chidos, hesitated, but finally dived in for a taste. The president was left a bit speechless from the heat, but the lingering flavor conquered his taste buds. He didn't even have time to wipe his hands before he called the factory, telling Richard he'd be visiting in 2 weeks. However, when higher-ups found a janitor bypassed the chain to contact the president, chaos erupted. The livid supervisor panicked, knowing the president would find the whole line in the red. If Richard's ideas didn't take off, the whole factory would be in big trouble. At that moment, Richard himself started doubting his decisions. After all, this was about the fate of everyone at the factory, and he felt totally unqualified for such responsibility. Yet, his wife firmly told him, "You can totally do this." Despite his hesitance, his wife pulled him in front of the mirror and encouraged him. "That handsome guy in the mirror is totally a hero, and he's going to save the factory. Speak up loudly. Don't let any clown interrupt you. I don't even know how to perform sales. Just take a wild guess. I'm really puzzled." So in the following days, his wife dragged Richard to the library to brush up on business skills, teaching him how to crunch numbers on prospect and profit. They discussed the meanings of costs and cycles, and at home practiced his speaking skills. Thanks to her, Richard's life was now bursting with love and sunshine. When the president was on his way to the factory, Richard and his wife were suit shopping, but unfortunately, neither of them knew how to tie a tie. His wife suggested he talk to his dad, who'd been calling in remorse since their last fight. In the end, persuaded by his wife, Richard returned to his childhood home, and this time his father seemed to genuinely acknowledge his mistakes. "I've always regretted being the kind of father that made you who you are today, but now, everything's different now." The gap between father and son finally closed, and their smiles reflected a sense of relief over the years. That day, the president's fancy car rolled up to the factory, while Richard sat in the car rehearsing a speech over and over. When the president asked where he was, a confident hand shot up in the crowd, and Richard was ready to shine. Richard stood tall in his suit, with colleagues cheering for him, while the president opened his arms wide. But all of this was just in his head. In reality, no one was cheering for him at all. He awkwardly made it through the crowd to the president, who then offered a handshake and cheered him on. Even though Richard practiced endlessly, the pressure of the president being there threw him off his game. He finally got the projector working, but misreading his lines caused an eruption of laughter throughout the room. It was evident that the carefully prepared script had actually constrained Richard's performance, and thus, at a crucial moment, he made the decision to switch off the projector, discard the script to one side, and dive into a fully committed improvisational performance. That's when the executives asked how much market share he expected to capture. Richard had no clue what market share meant, but suddenly remembered all the goodies on store shelves. So, with a confident smile breaking out, Richard decided to completely abandon the pretense. He candidly admitted he didn't know what market share was, but he did know what respect meant, and that was finding a taste of home on foreign shelves. If the Mexican immigrants knew there was a product made just for them, they'd certainly be elbowing their way to buy it. Not to mention, Mexicans accounted for a whopping 40% of California's population. Talk about a bright... Hearing this, the president stood up, opened his arms wide toward Richard, and questioned his subordinates about whoever noticed such a gigantic market share. Then he thanked Richard for bringing so many thought-provoking ideas, and without hesitation decided to invest in the product. In the following months, the fiery flavor was officially put into production, and everyone was super confident about this product. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel.